The Atlanta sun blazed down on a sticky September morning, pouring through the streaked windows of Jefferson Middle School's Room 12, splashing golden patches across the scuffed linoleum floor as a new school year kicked off with all the chaos and promise of a fresh start. Marcus Jackson, a wiry 12-year-old with a quick smile and eyes that sparkled like he knew something you didn't, settled into a desk near the back, his fingers fidgeting with the edges of a crisp new notebook. Its blank pages a quiet hope for something better than the year before. It was September 3rd, his first day at Jefferson after moving from Baltimore, and everything hit different. The hallways stretched wider, thick with the tang of pine cleaner and chalk dust. The lockers gleamed a bold crimson instead of the dull gray he was used to, and the chatter of kids filing in buzzed with southern drawls that rolled slow and heavy, nothing like the clipped voices of his old crew. Marcus reached up, brushing his neatly coiled hair, styled with precision the night before by his Aunt Ruby, her hands steady as she twisted each lock, her voice warm and firm. "You're a king, baby. Don't let nobody tell you different." He grinned at the memory, scanning the room, the faded Dream Big posters curling at the edges, the rows of desks filling with kids swapping summer stories about Braves games and Tybee Island trips, their laughter bouncing off the cinderblock walls. He kept his head low, doodling planets in his notebook, Mars, Saturn, a little rocket, hoping to slide into this new world without making waves. What nobody in Room 12 knew, not the kids trading Pokemon cards or the teachers sipping coffee down the hall, was that Marcus's dad, James Carter, was the new principal of Jefferson Middle School, a secret they'd cooked up over a stack of pancakes that morning in their cramped apartment off Peachtree Street. James had leaned into the hallway mirror, straightening his tie, his deep voice steady as he said, "Make your own way, son. Let 'em see you for you, not me." So they'd split up, Marcus hopping the MARTA bus with his beat-up backpack, James peeling out in his rattling Toyota, both playing their parts to keep the connection under wraps, at least for now. As the bell clanged sharp through the halls, kids shuffled into their seats, and Marcus felt the weight of new eyes, some curious, some indifferent, settling on him. He caught a nod from a lanky kid with a fade tie, who mouthed, "You good?" From across the room, Marcus nodded back, a flicker of relief loosening his shoulders. Maybe Atlanta wouldn't chew him up and spit him out after all. Then the door swung open, and Mrs. Evelyn Pierce swept in like a cold front rolling off the Chattahoochee, her gray bun pulled tight as a drum, her thin lips locked in a hard line, her heels clicking sharp against the floor like she owned every inch of it. She clutched a clipboard, barking names off the roll call. Jackson, Kayla, Lewis, Brandon. Her voice flat and clipped, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk hunting prey. When she hit Marcus Jackson, she stopped, a beat too long, her gaze narrowing into a cold, piercing squint that pinned him to his seat, her nose wrinkling just enough to notice if you were looking. He shifted, pencil stilling on his page, but she moved on, calling out, "Miller, Sarah," without a hitch. Class kicked off with a math warm-up, fractions, easy stuff, and Marcus shot his hand up, nailing 3/4 plus 1/2 in seconds, his voice steady despite the butterflies. Pierce turned from the board, her all right, dripping with something sour, her eyes flicking to his coils like they'd personally offended her, then darting away. By noon, Ty waved him over to shoot hoops at lunch, grinning, "You're quick, man. We need you on the court." And Marcus felt the knot in his gut ease, the sun warm on his face as they ran the blacktop. But heading back inside, he caught Pierce's stare through the hall window, sharp, unblinking, like a snake sizing up its next meal. And that knot twisted back tighter than ever. This wasn't just first-day jitters, folks. This was a warning shot, and Marcus didn't know it yet. But Room 12 was about to become ground zero for a storm nobody saw coming. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. This Atlanta Tale's got grit, heart, and a twist that'll hook you hard. The Georgia sun dipped lower as September rolled into October, its heat fading into a crisp fall bite that swept through Atlanta's streets, rustling the leaves outside Jefferson Middle School and sharpening the air with the scent of pine and damp earth. Inside Room 12, though, the chill had nothing to do with the weather. It grew heavier with every passing day, a quiet storm brewing under the fluorescent lights as Marcus Jackson threw himself into his new life, determined to make it work. He was a star in other classes, acing Mr. Lopez's science quizzes with perfect diagrams of the solar system, his sketches of constellations pinned up in the art hall earning nods from kids he barely knew. But with Mrs. Evelyn Pierce, it was like stepping into quicksand. She'd hover over his desk, her shadow falling long and cold across his notebook, her thin voice picking apart his cursive like it was a puzzle she couldn't stand to solve. "This is barely legible, Marcus," she'd snap, docking points on his essays for clarity, while Ty's half-page scrawl about fishing at Lake Lanier snagged straight A's, her pen circling his messy loops with a smile. Marcus bit his lip, shoving the papers into his backpack, the red ink burning hotter each time. One morning, scribbling fractions on the board, 3/8 plus 5/8, a no-brainer, he felt her breath on his neck, her voice cutting sharp. "Hurry it up, Marcus, we're not waiting all day," her foot tapping loud enough to turn heads. He nailed it, one hole, but she waved him off with a curt, "Sit down," no praise, no nothing. Minutes later, Sarah, a girl with braids and a shy grin, fumbled a simpler problem, and Pierce's tone melted to honey. "Take your time, sweetie. Math's tricky. You're doing fine." The contrast so stark, Ty shot Marcus a wide-eyed, "What the hell?" From across the room, his pencil frozen mid-doodle. Marcus shrugged, forcing a half-smile, but the sting dug deeper, a splinter he couldn't pull out. Then came history class. He stood tall, sharing how Aunt Ruby marched with Dr. King in '63. Her stories of picket lines and freedom songs lighting up his voice, his chest swelling with pride as he traced his family's roots right there in Atlanta's soil. Halfway through, Pierce's hand sliced the air. "That's enough, Marcus. Let's move on," cutting him dead, though he had 2 minutes left on the timer. The next kid, a boy with a buzz cut, rambled 5 minutes about a Disney World trip, off topic, all mouse ears and roller coasters. And Pierce beamed, clapping, "Wonderfully detailed." Marcus sank into his seat, the room spinning quiet, his pride snuffed out like a candle in the wind. At lunch, Ty slid onto the bench beside him, bouncing a basketball between his knees, his voice low. "Man, she's got it out for you." "My cousin Jamal went here 2 years back, said Pierce always rode the black kids harder. Called his braids distracting, till he buzzed 'em off." Marcus forced a laugh, poking at his fries. Maybe she just hates good handwriting. But that night, sprawled across his bed, the ceiling fan whirring above, Aunt Ruby's "Stand Tall, Baby" clashed hard with Pierce's glare, her wrinkled nose whenever she passed his desk, like his coils, his heritage, were as some kind of insult. He hadn't told his dad, James Carter, yet, hadn't wanted to drag the principal card into this, still hoping it'd blow over. But as he traced Mars's orbit on his sketchpad, the weight piled up fast, pressing down like Atlanta's humidity before a storm. Pierce wasn't just a tough teacher, folks. She was drawing a line, and Marcus was on the wrong side of it, whether he liked it or not. The art room at Jefferson Middle School buzzed with October energy, a wild hum of scissors snipping and voices bouncing off the cinderblock walls as Atlanta's golden sunlight slanted through dusty blinds, painting the floor in warm, shifting squares. It was a Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before the Fall Fest, and Room 12 had turned into a chaotic workshop. Kids sprawled across tables, cutting paper leaves and stringing garlands, the air thick with the sweet sting of glue and the chatter of weekend plans. Marcus Jackson sat at his usual spot near the back, his wiry frame hunched over a sheet of orange cardstock, carving perfect pumpkins with a focus that shut out the noise. His third one done. Stem curved just right, a border of tiny acorns sketched out in pencil, his tongue poking out like it always did when he locked in. He'd weathered weeks of Mrs. Evelyn Pierce's digs, her snide comments about his handwriting, her cold stares at his coils, and today felt like a truce, a chance to breathe. She'd been quiet, drifting between desks with a box of craft supplies, her gray bun tight as ever, her lips pressed into a thin slash that barely moved. Marcus kept his head down, scissors steady, the memory of Aunt Ruby's voice. "You're a king, baby. looping in his mind, steadying his hands. The room buzzed on, Ty wrestling with a lopsided leaf he called abstract art, Sarah giggling over a glitter spill, until Pierce stopped at Marcus's desk, her shadow falling heavy, her presence sucking the air out like a vacuum. "Finally following directions, huh?" she muttered, her voice loud enough to turn heads, sharp enough to slice through the hum, her eyes flicking to his neat pile of pumpkins with a wrinkle of her nose. Marcus clenched his jaw, kept cutting, pretending the jab didn't land, until a shout rang out from the back. "Yo, we need glue over here!" Pierce spun away, her heels clicking sharp, and he let out a slow breath, reaching for his water bottle to cool the burn in his chest. The next few minutes ticked by peaceful. Scissors snipped, voices rose. Marcus traced his acorns with a steady hand. Then it hit, a cold, thick drip splattering the top of his head. He froze, heart lurching, hand flying up. His fingers met a sticky, oozing mess, the sharp chemical sting of superglue biting his nose. Not the watery craft stuff they'd been using, but the industrial kind, the kind that locked metal together. Mrs. Pierce stood behind him, an open bottle dangling in her grip, her thin lips twitching into a smirk before melting into a fake gasp. "Oops, wrong bottle. What a mess!" The room dropped dead silent, a pencil clattering to the floor like a gunshot, every eye snapping to Marcus. His coils, his pride, now coated in a hardening shell. Phones clicked, Ty's, Sarah's, half the class, capturing her flicker of glee before she stammered, "I'll get towels," her voice shaky, her bluff crumbling fast. Marcus sat still, glue tugging his scalp, his pulse hammering as Ty bolted up. "I'm getting the nurse!" His sneakers squeaking out the door. Sarah stood too, her voice trembling but clear. "That's no accident. You grabbed the key for that cabinet." Pointing at the locked supply stash, the metal box Pierce had opened before class. The air crackled, kids rising, whispers piling into shouts. "She didn't even try the craft glue." "I saw her smirk." "Ah." And a tide turning fast and fierce. Marcus's hands shook, the glue burning now, pulling at his roots, but his eyes stayed dry. He wouldn't give her tears, not today. Pierce backed toward her desk, clutching the bottle like a shield, but the room had her cornered, cameras rolling, kids yelling, footsteps pounding closer from the hall. This wasn't a slip-up, folks. This was a line crossed, and Jefferson Middle School's about to explode with it. The nurse's office at Jefferson Middle School turned into a battlefield that Wednesday afternoon. The air thick with the antiseptic sting of bandages and the harsh chemical reek of superglue still clinging to Marcus Jackson's hair as chaos spilled out from room 12 and raced down Atlanta's buzzing hallways. Kids crammed the doorway, their sneakers squeaking on the tile, whispering fast. News of Mrs. Evelyn Pierce's accident spreading like wildfire through texts and wide-eyed stares. Marcus sat stiff on a cot, his wiry frame hunched, his hands hovering near his scalp where Nurse Daniels worked fast. Warm water soaking his coils, her fingers gentle but her jaw locked tight. Her phone snapping pics of the damage as red streaks bloomed across his skin. The glue's burn sinking deeper with every minute. His neatly styled locks, twisted with Aunt Ruby's love, his pride, were a sticky, hardening mess, tugging painfully at his roots, but his eyes stayed dry, locked on the wall, refusing to crack. Pierce hovered near the corner, her gray bun fraying at the edges, her skirt twisting in her shaky hands as she muttered, "It was a mix-up, just the wrong bottle." Her voice thin and wobbly, fooling no one, not with Ty pacing outside like a guard dog, turning away gawkers, not with Sarah perched on a chair, her braids swinging as she clutched her phone, texting the video clip to every group chat in school. The room pulsed with tension, kids from art class filtering in, their faces a mix of shock and fury, their voices overlapping. "She smirked!" "That wasn't craft glue." While the super glue bottle sat on the counter, its silver cap glinting like evidence in a crime scene, Marcus took a shallow breath, the sting flaring hot, and glanced at the clock. 3:12 p.m., wondering how long till this hit his dad. Then the door banged open, and Mr. Lopez, the science teacher, stormed in, his usual grin gone, his eyes blazing as they locked on the bottle. Then Marcus. "Carter's in a district meeting. I'm pulling him now," he barked, fingers flying across his phone, his voice tight with something close to rage. The hall outside hummed louder, teachers peeking in, kids craning necks, until heavy, purposeful footsteps cut through the noise, a shadow filling the doorway like a thundercloud rolling in. James Carter, Principal Carter, stepped inside, his tie askew, his warm brown eyes sweeping the room and landing hard on Marcus, his son, his secret. "Dad," Marcus whispered, the words slipping out soft but heavy, and the air sucked out of the room. Ty froze mid-step. Sarah's jaw dropped. Pierce's face drained chalk white, the bottle slipping an inch in her grip as the dots slammed together. Those eyes, Marcus's eyes, stared back from the man in the suit, the truth snapping into focus like a puzzle piece nobody saw coming. Carter's gaze flashed pure fury for a split second, raw, unfiltered, a father's fire, then snapped to steel, his voice dropping low, a controlled thunder that shook the walls. "Nurse Daniels, keep going, get him cleaned up," he said, steady but vibrating. "Lopez, call the district, get a sub in here now. Mrs. Pierce, my office. Wait there." Pierce flinched, her heels clicking uneven as she slunk out, the kids parting like the Red Sea, their stares pinning her like nails. Carter turned back to Marcus, kneeling quick, his hand brushing his son's shoulder. "You okay, Marcus?" His voice cracking just enough to show the dad beneath the principal. Marcus nodded, throat tight, the burn on his scalp nothing next to the weightlifting. He wasn't alone now. Carter stood, barking orders. "Cameras on, statements taken, lock this down." His phone already buzzing as teachers scrambled, the hall erupting with shouts and whispers. Pierce's lie was dead on arrival, and Jefferson Middle School was about to feel the quake of a secret blown wide open. The principal's kid, the glue, the reckoning, all crashing down at once. The next morning broke over Atlanta with a gray, restless sky, the kind that promised rain but held back just to keep everyone on edge, and Jefferson Middle School lit up like a fuse. News vans camped at the gates, their satellite dishes stabbing the air, red lights glaring off the wet asphalt as parents swarmed the front office, their voices a rising tide of anger and disbelief. Inside, James Carter sat in his principal's office, the blinds half drawn, his desk buried under a pile of handwritten student letters, Ty's jagged scrawl spilling out. "She changed his grades on purpose. I saw her do it." Sarah's tight cursive confessing, "She laughed when he left crying last week." Each one a gut punch he hadn't seen coming, a map of pain his son had walked alone while he'd been down the hall, pushing papers and preaching inclusion. His tie hung loose, his warm brown eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. The weight of Marcus's glue-streaked hair, his boy, his secret, crashing down on him like a brick through glass. Outside, the halls buzzed louder than ever, kids clutching phones, replaying the viral clips of Pierce pouring superglue, her smirk caught in shaky focus, time-stamped 2:47 p.m., no room for doubt, no way to spin it. Down the corridor, Mrs. Evelyn Pierce slumped in the conference room, her gray bun unraveling, her lawyer whispering fast as the school board filed in one by one, their faces carved from stone, folders thick with complaints slapping the table like gavels. Superintendent Dr. Hayes marched through the front doors, her heels clicking sharp, a manila envelope in her grip stuffed with 5 years of ignored red flags, reports of Pierce's snide remarks, unexplained grade drops, parents brushed off, all buried until now, all screaming the same pattern Marcus had lived. At 10 a.m., the emergency meeting kicked off, the room sealed tight, the video looping silent on a screen behind Dr. Hayes, Pierce's hand tipping the bottle, the glue dripping slow, her lips twitching before the fake gasp. Every frame a nail in her coffin. "Explain," Hayes demanded, her voice cutting like steel through the hush. Pierce shifted, her hands twisting her skirt, her excuse limp. "I didn't know he was his son." And a board member fired back, sharp and cold. So you'd treat him better if you did? That's your defense? The room erupted slow, testimonies piling up, teachers stepping forward, their voices shaky but sure. She'd rant in the break room, called his hair unprofessional. I let it slide, thought she'd stop. Kids recounting every slight, every time Pierce's nose wrinkled at Marcus's desk, every answer she ignored. Hours unspooled, the clock ticking toward dusk, and the call came down hard. Pierce was fired on the spot, her teaching license yanked, the district footing Marcus's medical bills for the burns still raw on his scalp. Carter spent the day in back-to-back talks, parents shouting in the lobby, civil rights advocates on the line, district suits scrambling, pushing new rules fast, mandatory bias training, a complaint hotline, cameras in every classroom. By nightfall, the school sat quiet, the vans peeling off, and Carter slipped into the nurse's office, the last light fading through the blinds as he sat beside Marcus. Glue stains fading, bandages fresh, his son's eyes steady despite the pain. "I'm sorry I didn't see it, son," Carter cracked, his voice rough, a father's guilt bleeding through the principal's armor. Marcus looked up, his voice soft but firm. "Now they all do, Dad. Maybe that's enough." The halls were empty, but the echoes of those letters, those clips, that day, they weren't going anywhere, and neither was the fight just starting to burn. A week after the glue hit Marcus Jackson's hair, the Jefferson Middle School boardroom swelled past capacity, the air buzzing with a restless energy as Atlanta's late October sun sliced through tall windows, casting sharp beams across a sea of faces. Parents in folding chairs, activists with notepads, kids perched on the edges, their sneakers dangling. Marcus sat front row between his mom and Aunt Ruby. A soft black cap pulled low over his healing scalp, chemical burns fading but still tender. His coils clipped short, after a specialist's careful work, a quiet loss he carried with every glance in the mirror. His warm brown eyes, so like his dad's, scanned the room. Ty and Sarah sat nearby, their phones tucked away, but their resolve loud. Their texts from that awful day, now a spark that had lit this fire. James Carter stood at the back, his tie crisp again, his principal's badge gleaming, watching the crowd with a mix of pride and exhaustion. 7 days of chaos had carved lines into his face, but they'd also carved a path forward. Superintendent Dr. Hayes took the podium, her suit pressed but her voice heavy, adjusting the mic with a sharp tap that hushed the room. "What happened here wasn't one bad moment. It's a system that's failed too long," she said, her words landing like stones. A screen behind her flashing stats that sucked the air out. Dozens of buried complaints across the district, ignored for years. Kids silenced, parents dismissed, all piling up until Marcus's pain forced the lid off. Gasps rippled through, heads shaking as Dr. Hayes pressed on. "This ends now." Off to the side, Mrs. Evelyn Pierce sat like a ghost, her gray bun limp, her lawyer scribbling notes, her face hollowed out by a week of viral infamy. Ex-students had crawled out of the woodwork, their voices raw on social media. "She called my braids ghetto in 18. She failed me for no reason, said I didn't belong." A portrait of poison too clear to deny. The board's verdict hit fast and final. Pierce's license revoked, investigations greenlit with civil rights groups circling. But the real shift came next, a wave bigger than one firing. Carter stepped up, his voice steady, a father and leader bleeding into one. "As an educator, as a dad, I've seen this from both sides. We've got work to do, real work, and we start today." Cheers erupted, hands clapping sharp, as he laid it out. Mandatory cultural sensitivity training for every teacher, student councils to call out bias, a school where no kid's afraid to walk in. The room caught fire. Local barbershops and cafes pledged funds for new programs. Activists offered workshops. Parents formed task forces on the spot, their pens scratching fast over sign-up sheets. Marcus listened, his chest swelling. Not just for him, but for Ty's little sister starting next year, for Sarah's cousin down the street, for every kid Pierce had tried to dim. During a break, a fifth grader with twists tapped his arm. "My brother's coming here soon. He'll be okay 'cause of you." And Marcus managed a small grin, the cap hiding his scars but not his spark. By afternoon's end, the board rolled out hard rules. Art supplies locked in clear bins, grading books open for review, a counselor hired just for kids who'd felt the sting of hate. Walking out, Carter's hand rested on Marcus's shoulder, the crowd thinning as sunlight dipped low, and Marcus felt it. Pain turned to power, a school waking up from a long, ugly sleep, a movement born from one cruel act, and 1,000 voices saying, "Enough." 6 months after the glue hit Marcus Jackson's hair, Jefferson Middle School stood transformed under Atlanta's warm April sun, its hallways buzzing with a new kind of energy as kids hurried to morning classes, their laughter bouncing off walls now painted bright with murals. Bold strokes of every skin tone, every hairstyle, every story, a riot of color celebrating what used to divide. Marcus strode through the main entrance, his coils back in full force, healthy, tight, and proud, restored by Aunt Ruby's friend at a découture salon who'd worked magic on the damage, turning scars into strength. No more soft cap, no more hiding. He walked tall, his backpack slung loose, fist bumps flying from kids who'd once been strangers, Ty grinning wide, Sarah waving from her locker, as he made his way down the hall. Gone was the nervous boy who'd stepped into room 12 last September. In his place stood a 12-year-old who'd helped rewrite the rules, his quiet courage a spark that had caught fire. The morning announcements crackled over the speakers. "Unity Fairs this Friday, y'all. Bring your A-game." "Onk geets." "Ashties." And Marcus smiled, remembering how the idea had bubbled up in one of the new student council meetings, his project on the history of black hairstyles already abuzz. Kids texting him pics of their own twists and fades to add to the show. James Carter leaned against the hall wall, his principal's badge glinting, watching the stream of students with a quiet pride. The past 6 months had been a grind, meetings stretching late, policies rewritten from scratch, but the payoff was real, etched in every mural, every smile. The anonymous tip line had snagged trouble early, 2 bias incidents caught and handled before they grew. Teachers sat through weekly talks, owning their blind spots, the lounge now a place of real chat, not whispers. Ty, now president of the Diversity Council, caught up at lunch. "You're still hitting the elementary school next week, right?" Sliding into his seat with a tray of fries, the council's new mentorship gig taking them to younger kids to preach inclusion loud and clear. "Wouldn't miss it," Marcus shot back, his voice steady. He'd been scared to speak up at first, but now he knew what his words could do, a ripple spreading wide as other kids shared their own stories, a wave of change rolling through the district. Jefferson had turned into a model, educators from Macon and Savannah driving up to see how it worked, Carter giving talks, his voice raw with both the dad who'd failed to see and the leader who'd learned fast. That afternoon, Marcus hit a cultural workshop, kids teaching each other about their roots, the room packed, standing room only. His turn at the front, walking them through Aunt Ruby's civil rights tales. The crowd nodding, Mr. Lopez grinning from the door. "Never thought I'd see this man," he said to Carter, who'd stopped by to watch. Later, in Carter's office, they sifted through the anonymous feedback box, a weekly ritual, Marcus pulling out a note. "Can we do a monthly Heritage Day?" Carter adding it to the list, the school learning fast that the best fixes came from the kids themselves. As the day wound down, Marcus paused at the new mural, a weekend project he'd helped paint. Kids of every shade standing together, no one erased, no one dimmed, and spotted a moving truck outside. Carter explaining soft, "Pierce's last stuff. She's gone for good." That night, at a community dinner under string lights, Marcus stood before classmates, teachers, neighbors. "What happened to me hurt deep," he said, his voice clear, ringing out. "But look what we built. Every kid walking in here knows they belong now. Every voice counts." The applause roared, a thunder for him, for Ty, for Sarah, for a school reborn from one cruel act into a beacon of hope. As the sun dipped, painting the sky gold, new signs rose. Jefferson Schools, every story matters. And Marcus knew Pierce's echo had faded, replaced by a legacy he and his dad had forged, proof that standing up can change everything. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, folks. This Atlanta journey's wrapped with heart and hustle, and we've got more stories coming to light up your feed. America, don't miss out.